Hello, good morning, and welcome to another episode of Into the Afroverse with your host, William Jones. Into the Afroverse, we're taking Black folks into the future. Once again, we talk about Afrofuturism. Remember, we're talking about the space and the place for Black folks in the future. All too often, we talk about moving forward in time. We talk about what the future of the world will look like, and we look at science fiction, fantasy, books, novels, movies, cartoons, and the like. Oftentimes, Black people and their experiences are left out. The Black face is left out of these stories. So we look at Afrofuturism to determine where are we going to be in the future. And we're talking with people on this show who are the shapers of that future, who are today creating the world that we want to see tomorrow. And today we're continuing a conversation that we started last week with the organization known as DWASF. And if you were with us last week, we had a lot of folks in the group and we're having a great conversation. So I want them to reintroduce themselves to you all. So we're going to start off with Cerise. Can you reintroduce yourself, please?
Hello, everyone. I am Kay Cerise Wright, author of a book called COG, Cyberpunk Science Fiction Book, numerous articles, short stories, and poems. I'm also the founder and president of Diverse Writers and Artists of Speculative Fiction, which is a group designed to support writers of Afrofuturism, speculative fiction, which includes horror, fantasy, and science fiction.
Excellent. Stafford.
Hello, I'm Stafford Battle. I'm excited to be here again. I'm a writer of, obviously, of science fiction and speculative stories. I've got some short stories published. I've got novels that I've put on the internet. I've worked with different organizations to help promote our participation in sci-fi. You can reach me at staffordbattle.org.
Excellent. L.H. Moore.
Hi, everyone. I'm L.H. Moore, and I'm a speculative fiction author and poet. And you can find my fantasy and sci-fi and horror fiction short stories in numerous publications and anthologies. And you can find out more about that at lhmorecreative.com.
Diane.
Hi, this is Diane Williams. I'm a co-founder at DWASF. I dabble in short stories, but I'm more of a promoter and supporter of artists and writers of speculative fiction and fantasy. You can reach me at dwasf.org online on our Twitter or Facebook page.
Excellent. And El Marie.
Hi, I'm El Marie Wood. I'm a psychological horror author of novels, screenplays, short stories, and sometimes poetry and essays. What I neglected to mention in our last week's session was that I'm also the founder and president of the Speculative Fiction Academy, where we teach students who are either brand new or writing and interested in learning something new about the craft, about how to write science fiction, horror fiction, fantasy, podcasts, screenplays, and the like.
Gotcha. And real quick, can you just remind us, what does DWASF stand for and how long have you guys been around?
DWASF stands for Diverse Writers and Artists of Speculative Fiction, and we've been around, I think, since about 2015.
Excellent. And what is it that separates speculative fiction from, say, regular fiction or science fiction?
Well, Diane here. When you speak of speculative, I get this a lot from people. Mm-hmm. Science fiction, a lot of people say hard science. You've got hard science in it that you can see. Fantasy is, well, most of us think Lord of the Ringish, elves and fairies and things that float or whatever. Speculative fiction, I like to tell people, think of Toni Morrison. And they always look at me and go, what? It says, yes. Think of Beloved. Think of your favorite ghost story. Think of a myth. Think of mythology. That is all speculative. It's part of it's part of humans being here on this earth. And if we can say what if and then tell a story, that's speculative fiction.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I
Please.
like to think that the genres kind of almost blend back and forth between
Yeah.
one another. That you can have a horror story that has fantasy elements. You can have sci-fi that has horror elements. So the different genres kind of blend back and forth, but yet they still fall under this kind of speculative fiction umbrella.
Gotcha. Last we were talking about the significance of telling these stories, especially when it comes to young people seeing themselves in the future and so forth, and basically reminding ourselves that we do have a place and a space in the future. Based on some of the changes you've been seeing that's been taking place in Hollywood, streaming, books, do you think Hollywood, streaming, television, whatever you want to call it, do you think they're finally getting it right? What do you see in terms of what they're getting right when it comes to the representation of Black folks in these different mediums, and where are they still lacking?
Well, I mean, Black Panther really, I think, kind of made it something that people could understand and see also as being profitable.
Mhm.
And if I feel that if anything, Black Panther was really instrumental in kind of, even though people have been writing, we've been out here doing this, we've been doing
Right.
this work and writing this work and creating works. But Black Panther, I think, really opened a lot of doors in terms of what Afrofuturism could be.
Yeah.
I think we have to be careful though, because I look at Star Wars and we have black characters, but they're not black characters. They're just characters who they painted black. That's why when you're going back to Black Panther, here's a character who had her roots in Africa, and it really meant something. And it's like there's a whole story of can James Bond be black?
Right.
And some people just get tear their hair out. No, he can't be black because he's got to be white. My question is why? Because unless you, and we have a super spy, a speculative super spy, but have him come from the African roots, and that brings up Static Shock, who came up out of the African American society and had a different viewpoint on things. So we have to be careful, I think, when we're saying we got more people who are darker than the other people. And that's one of my problems with Star Trek. You got people of color, black people, aliens, Romulans, Klingons, but they're not African centric. So I'm not sure.
Well, well, there was this one episode, and I can't come up with the name, but if you're old like me, you remember that one Star Trek back in the day where they had black people and they had pseudo African outfits. I was like, oh my God, I'm almost seen.
Oh, I remember that one.
Yeah. But just to add into what you guys are saying is, I also wanted to say that what they're doing is, I agree with Stafford that they are putting more color out there, and I'd like to see a blend. I'd like to see a rainbow, whatever. But I think if they're really doing it right, they won't have a problem having an evil black presence. It's you've made it when you've got the supervillains.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yes. Yeah, that's definitely one thing that's lacking. There's been a few here and there. You mentioned James Bond, and I remember Yaphet Kotto playing a villain in one of the James Bond films and so forth. But yeah, that really hasn't been, I guess Killmonger, you could argue, has been the most significant
Right.
black villain to come on screen. And we start to see more of that. Yeah, I guess you can say that would be like the next level, I guess, in terms of storytelling. What do you think is missing? What do you think was missing when you didn't have this representation, when you didn't have this large collection of authors like yourself and other content creators that are now putting out more Black folks in these different spaces? What do you think previous generations missed out on, and how has that impacted us moving forward?
Centering. I think it was the Black characters were not centered. The Black characters does not have agency. They were just there as background, or they were a helper for the white-centered character.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that really affects children and how they see themselves growing up. You know, I'm not important because I'm not centered. And that really needs to change. And Afrofuturism is just one way that we can change it. If we can change the status quo, we can change the future.
We can't all be magical Negroes. And that's what you would see.
Mm-hmm.
You would see the magical Negro that would help someone along. We might be a wizard, but we're the wizard that helps this other main character go.
Right.
Or we were the maid, or we were the first killed in a horror movie, you know, to bring it back to the stuff that I'm the horror person on the, well, actually LH Moore's here with me. So, you know,
I was about to say, so yeah.
She can't leave horror. If she ever were to try, she would.
Every time I try.
She can't. So, you know, but I mean, the point, it's representation, but it's not only for the young people to find themselves or that it's also for society to see us as real people.
Right.
We often were characters that could be forgotten in a movie. They were just kind of in the background, but they, you know, should something need to be cleaned or picked up or a door be opened, well, there was the Black character that you thought you saw a minute ago. Or you were the person who would turn on, you know, someone who trusted them in the movie and run and go tell whatever it was. People, I don't think that, and we are creatures of habit, right? I mean, I think that if you're given this media on television in our homes, and if you're given this media in movies, and if you are given this kind of reading material or commercials show us in stark contrast to a model that may be, you know, this is the long-haired, you know, blonde, and then you have a model from an African diaspora who it looks, the style of dress is completely different, and I don't mean ethnic in terms of where they're from. I mean, it's a completely different style that's supposed to be trendy, but we would all agree is not, right? And so these are subliminal messages that are put out, and if that's the thing that needs to change, if we're going to change the way that the movie looks, I'm reminded of Along Came a Spider. And James Patterson book turned into a movie, and in that movie, Morgan Freeman is cast as Alex Cross.
Right.
He is not written that way in the book, and it was a fantastic boon for anyone who was over 40, because it was just like, oh, that's right, of course we can do this. You know, we can play this role. It's the same idea. No one thought of an older man being Alex Cross. He was clearly, you know, a younger guy who was likely muscular. There was a whole mindset, you know, focused around, if you read the book. And it was debunked when we saw Morgan Freeman on stage playing the role perfectly. That's the same thing that has to happen for Black characters, because we then become more human and more relatable. And like, you know, the person that they know lives across the street from them that they've never talked to, now they can be more relatable and understand that individual because they've seen an image or something that gave them that understanding and level of, you know, acceptance, if you will.
Yeah, it has so much to do with perception. You know, if we've been perceived a certain way and that people have stereotyped us a certain way, that even our characters, if we're not being centered, tend to fall within those stereotypes and perceptions.
Right.
And the thing is that one of the things that has been so important about so many more of us writing, so many more of us being involved with the storytelling, is that you're starting to see that we can be centered as the protagonist, whether we are the heroes or even when we're the villains. If you want to look at Star Wars right now, we can talk about Moff Gideon and the Mandalorian. We can talk about Reva and Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah.
So, you know, they are definitely villains. So, you know, by being able to center us, there are so many stories out there for us to be able to tell because they have not been told before, because they have not been told from our perspective, from our stories, from our traditions and folklore. So now these stories are out there. It's opening up a whole new world and everybody is finding out.
Excellent. If you're just joining us, first of all, you're missing out. So if you're just joining us, this is Into the Afroverse with William Jones here on WOL 1450 AM, 95.9 FM, and you can also find us on WOLDCnews.com. And we are joined today by the members of DWASF. Now, you're talking about, and you mentioned this portrayal of African culture, representation, and so forth. Do we run the risk of trivializing it in certain ways if it's done a certain type of way? Are there certain stories that you feel, shouldn't be touched and given a futuristic or fantasy angle to? Like we see a lot with some of the stories now that are going back to, you see like Tulsa that they used in The Watchmen. You see with the Lovecraft County, where you saw the the depiction of the civil rights movement and things of that nature. Do you feel that it may end up, if we're not careful, trivializing it, or that those stories need to be told in those contexts?
I'm a historian, and honestly, I felt that the depiction of Tulsa in Watchmen and in Lovecraft Country, it really helped bring it to the forefront that people who never heard of the Greenwood Massacre and what happened there in 1921 now know about it.
Right.
So, it was a way of bringing history to life, and yet in a setting that is unexpected and also futuristic. So, for me as a historian, being able to bring the past and let it inform this future thinking, I think is in many ways a great thing if done with sensitivity.
Very good. Anyone else want to chime in on that? Telling these stories, but like you said, with sensitivity. Have you seen it done wrong? Have you seen it done and you kind of like, ooh, I don't know, I'm not too cool with that depiction. Have you come across anything like that? Go ahead, Stafford.
Yeah, there's one thing I think that may be controversial. I mean, what needs to be told. We need to tell a story of slavery. And there are a couple short stories. Stephen Barnes did a couple where reversed the roles of slavery, where blacks were the masters and whites were the slaves. But we need to say, look, slavery was a human condition that existed in all cultures. And we're not trying to hide it. We're not trying to hide the fact that Africa was not a utopia. There were empires and kings and evil villains and just people who were tyrants, which to me is great because that showed we had power.
Right.
But they took away from us and said, you have no power. You're just a slave. No, we had power. Y'all just got lucky. So I'd like to see more stories when people talk about slavery in Africa and how it affected that country. I try to address that. I'm writing a piece called the Afrofuturist Bible, and it's a long story, but we try to explore what would Africans do when they address with slavery and realize the good and the evil of it, and what should they do about it.
I see.
William, I just want to add into that is this is the humanization of Black people. We're human. This is just showing that we're human. So showing slavery, showing history, this is the normalization of us just being here. We're here. This is normal. This will always be normal. What will be abnormal is when we're not in here. So I think by him saying, slavery, the story of that, slavery is human. It's what humans do to other humans. And we do some awful things, no matter what our color is. But that's the normalcy of what a human being is.
Great point. Great point. Now, one of the things I want you guys to address is as Afrofuturism becomes more popular, more people are hearing about it and talking about it. One of the things that concerns me is, and you've seen this happen so many times when Black folk create something oftentimes we lose control of it and it gets sold back to us and it doesn't look like the thing that we created because other folks come in, their interests supersede ours, and it begins to shape it differently than what we intended. What are your concerns moving forward for Afrofuturism? If you have any.
I mean, creating anything anywhere, all creators of any race and gender have to deal with losing control of what their material might be, right? I mean, I think that, you have an editing process in publishing, then that could change the trajectory of your story. Sometimes you get characters cut out, whatever. With screenplays, it's even worse. If you sell it, it's out of your hands now, and someone's going to do what they will with it. So your screenplay, the initial piece at least, is like a blueprint. So I think that, but that exists for everyone. It's not specific to anyone. The recourse, if that is a concern, is to produce yourself. And there are ample opportunities for that and a much wider acceptance for that now than there were how it used to be years ago. I mean, self-publishing is sort of weathered the storm that existed in the early 2000s towards, the quality of the work and those sorts of criticisms. And again, those were not restricted to Black creators at all. But there is a recourse. If you can't find what you're looking for, you can make it. Right. And I think that people have to make a decision, of course, whether or not that's the way they want to do. They want to produce a movie, they want to produce their own journal, they want to produce a book, whatever it is. But there is that option.
Anyone else like to chime in on that?
I think what Elmarie Wood said is as a basis. If you're an independent artist, I think you should establish your reputation and quality first, so that people know what to expect. And then if you try to, sell your work to the larger market, you will have a base to support you in maintaining your vision.
I see. Anyone else?
Yeah, I agree with Marie. And it's hard to, once something gets out and people start to love it, they're going to co-opt it. We hear that about music. We hear that about just about everything that we do. We know that we are a creative people. And even in the worst of times, we have still created. And be that music, be that physical art, storytelling, we create. And if you're a creator, it's going to be co-opted by the masses. Because if the masses love what you're doing, they're going to copy it. They're going to try to take it away. So you might say, well, we did that first. Well, we hear a lot of that from young people and from older people. We did that first. We did that first. Yes, but you have to be aware that something like that is you have to be aware of who you are. And maybe that's part of us recognizing ourselves as leaders and not followers.
Excellent point. Once again, this is Into the Afroverse with William Jones as your host here on WOL 1450 AM, 95.9 FM, and online, WOLDCnews.com. And be sure to tell other folks to tune in. Missing great conversation just like this one that we're having today. I can't believe it. We are almost out of time yet again. What I would like to get from you guys is, in closing, what's your vision for the future, and what role do you see in helping to create that vision, bring it to life?
Good question.
Yeah, I'm trying to do this without coughing, but excuse me. But the vision that I have, I feel I'm so lucky because I'm living in a time where I can pick up a piece of poetry from L.H. Moore. I can pick up horror, even though I'm a scaredy cat, from Elmarie Wood. I can find children's books, and I can find curriculum based on speculative fiction from Cherise Moore. I didn't even know Black people wrote cyberpunk. I mean, really, it's like I feel that I am the luckiest reader in the world right now. This is not the world I grew up in. I did not. I could only pick up books that had blondes on it, with blue eyes or robots, and imagine that perhaps that robot looked like me. But there was nothing that was like me. But now all I could see is I see more of this. I see us promoting more young writers, more authors, more artists who are actually taking these stories or writing songs or writing scripts. I feel I like a Janelle Monáe. I see more of that, and I see us promoting that and helping those people along. If they have any questions about that, they want to learn more about that, then they can come to us for that. That's what I see.
Excellent. We are up against it, and I gotta close. I definitely want to have this group back because I enjoyed this conversation, and I know the folks listening out there enjoy it as well. Real quick, Cerise, can you just tell once again how folks can reach DWASF?
Folks can find DWASF online at dwasf.org, DWASF.org. We're also on Twitter at DiverseSpecFic. We're also on Instagram at Diverse Creators and Facebook. You can find me at kcerise.net. My website has my publications if you're interested. And I think that's it.
Excellent. Well, once again, ladies and gentlemen, a lot of times, Black folk complain about what they're seeing and what they're not seeing. Here are a group of writers putting out the type of work that you guys say you want to see. So make sure you get out there and support these writers and all these writers and content creators that are giving you this future and this representation that we so surely need. Once again, for Into the Afroverse, I am your host, William Jones, and we're on every Tuesday at 10 a.m. right here on WOL, 1450 a.m., 95.9 FM. And once again, you can find us online, WOLDCnews.com. Once again, thank you to all of my guests. Enjoyed having you on. Take care, ladies and gentlemen, and enjoy your day.